Hello again, we're back to James Bond, part 3. You can see I've had a shave. It's now the evening, the rest of this was happening this morning. My phone got full of memory, so I had to upload it to YouTube. So I did that, and that took a while. So I've cleared some more space on my phone, and here I am, clean shaven, all showered and everything, because I've been very lazy today. I didn't shower all day. I've had what I would call a dole day. And that's like being on the dole, and you get a bit creative. You make videos about James Bond and mess around with music. Yep, quite interesting times. So we'd got up to done Thunderball, which is the highest grossing James Bond film of all time. I'm just going to go into my thing. I've just realised. Let me get my spreadsheet up so I can continue to give you the stats of grosses and stuff. Yep, so Thunderball, unless something drastic happens, it will always be the most seen James Bond film at the box office in terms of bums on seats. Something might come and run it close, and has done. But, it'd be difficult to pull in those kind of numbers. Those are kind of like high-end Marvel numbers or Star Wars. Bond doesn't often encroach into that territory. In a way, James Bond was the sort of popular franchise, the Star Wars, the Marvel of its day, but it got overtaken. By other genres, the next film in at number 10 is one such film that basically it shows James Bond following trends rather than leading them. Yeah, I can understand why people think it's a bit crap, but I've just always loved it. I first saw this film, I think I got maybe muddled before when I was talking, but I think I saw this on a double bill with the Roger Moore film, Gold. Could be wrong. Or was that Down As Off Forever? Maybe I saw this one on a double bill with Live and Let Die, I don't know. Obviously, I went to the pictures after these films came out when I was old enough, probably like 76, 77, 78, that kind of time. So typically then, films got reissued as double bills, with other films, and you went to see two for the price of one. We remember those happy times of going to the pictures in the past before multiplexes. Anyway, it's Man with a Golden Gun. So this often gets slagged by Bond aficionados, and it's one of the lowest grossing ones. If you released it now, it would make $477 million. At the time, it didn't do very well. I think one of the reasons for that was it was released right at the end of 1974. There was only an 18-month gap between this and Live and Let Die. Maybe people were bonded out. Maybe people hadn't taken to Roger. So they'd seen Live and Die out of curiosity, and they said, actually, I'm maybe not into this Roger Moore guy. I don't know. But it goes to Thailand, a country I always wanted to go to and eventually get to. I haven't been to the islands there. But it's got fantastic locations, got a cool John Barry score, and it's got one of the greatest villains in James Bond history. Probably, for many people, if he's not the top villain, he's in the top 2 or 3, and that's Christopher Lee. He's magnificent, and he acts as a kind of flip side to the James Bond character. He's an assassin as well, but for hire. There's a great scene later on in the film where he sort of says to Bond, we're quite alike, and but then Roger Moore says, you're full of it, and challenges him on that. And Roger's really good in that scene. In this one, Roger he's still shackled with the Sean Connery. They get him doing Sean Connery things, like twisting women's arms behind their back and being kind of quite physical in that way, which suited the tougher Sean Connery character. But Roger Moore needs to find a different groove because his forte is like light comedy. But there's still very funny bits. I love Nick Nack, Herb Villachet. Really funny henchman, fairly ridiculous that like a guy could cause so much havoc, but he does, and it's funny. It's got a cool pre-credit sequence, quite weird in Scaramanga's Funhouse. Quite an unusual, slightly surreal sequence carrying on from Live and Let Die, but I haven't got to that yet. The theme song's not great by Lulu. It's a cool credit sequence. And then you've got J.W. Pepper reappearing in it again. A lot of people don't like that, bringing in sort of comedic tones. But I've always loved the J.W. Pepper character. It's got one of the greatest stunts ever committed to celluloid, where the car does the barrel roll. Basically, they put it in a computer. God knows how long that would have taken back then. Did the physics, and a stunt guy performed it. It's got a whoop sound effect, which you could maybe do without. But it's an amazing sequence. You got Scaramanga's golden gun when he puts it together, stuff like that. So I think people of a certain age who saw it at a certain time really like this film. I do. Interesting fact is, I know Peter Merton does the set design on this. That's the only time he did a James Bond film. And I love Scaramanga's island design and his apartment and the table where they eat dinner. It's got one of the best Bond dining scenes, you know, where James Bond gets wined and dined by his adversary. Those scenes are great in films. We haven't had one in the Daniel Craig era yet. Maybe we will, but they tend to slow the action down. But I don't mind that. I've always felt like those scenes are very Bonding. So Golden Gun in at 10. Number 9. I was maybe going to put this higher, and this is a funny one, but it's just the last time I watched it, I thought, I really do like this. It's got its faults, but I saw it when I was very young. I think this was the one I saw on a double bill with Live and Let Die. What a great double bill. It's Diamonds Are Forever. It's a key film in the Bond canon. First, Sean Connery comes back and he is paid a record fee for an actor. He's paid £1 million fee, which was the highest fee ever paid to an actor back then. Basically, the previous film hadn't done as well with George Lazenby. The studio was like, bring back Connery, and they just kind of brushed over things. It alludes to what's happened in the previous film, in the pre-credit sequence. But this film brings in the comedy aspect. They get a scriptwriter in called Tom Mankiewicz, and he writes Man with a Golden Gun, Live and Let Die. It's very funny. And this is the beginning of what we call the James Bond comedies, really, which continues into the Roger era. So, it actually starts with Sean, and Sean's got a great light comic touch. When he appears in this, Sean, he's filled out a bit. I mean, he's 41 in this film, 41. But he's looking older. But he kind of he's having a whale of a time. He's got great one-liners. And what they start bringing into these era of films, and the next two, is this surrealism. There's a weird bit where he almost gets cremated. And I remember that's really scary with a friend. And he said that gave him nightmares. It's got some quite funny comedic characters. There's the two henchmen, Mr. Winton and Mr. Kidd. I mean, the depiction of them, they're a gay couple, would probably seem offensive now. It is, I guess, but at the time, it didn't, it wasn't something that registered with my young mind. I just thought they were like really funny, witty guys. They are top henchmen. The guy playing Blofeld is actually my favourite Blofeld. It's Charles Gray. Again, he's miscast apparently. He's nothing like the Blofeld of the books, but he's kind of witty and urbane. There's a bit where he dresses in drag and comes out dressed as a woman to escape, the clutches of Bond. There's a great bit where Bond gets on a lift outside a casino in Vegas, and he goes to the top and uses a suction cup thing, and you can see the lights of old Vegas if you go to Las Vegas now. Diamonds Are Forever's filmed in old Vegas. There's a great bit where the car goes on two wheels, the Mustang. There's actually continuity error there, which they kind of correct in the edit. Jill St. John, I mean, the characters, it's not a great depiction of female characters. She's kind of made to look pretty stupid, but she's a lot of fun. I like her character. There's lots of funny supporting characters, like the character Willard White. It's got a great scene where Connery goes to meet the and he meets a diamond expert, played by Lawrence Naismith, who was in The Persuaders and The Amazing Mr. Blunden. He gets given some sherry and just shows his expertise with wine, because he correctly identifies the original grape that the sherry was derived from, much to M's charging. So it's full of wit. It kind of sends itself up. It climaxes pretty poorly. It's got a fairly lame climax, but it's kind of fun. It doesn't bother me as much. Again, it's the classic Bond third act problem. They don't always have good third acts. This doesn't, but the humour of the thing carries it a long way. Got an amazing theme song, one of the great all-time Bond theme songs, Diamonds Are Forever. Probably the top 2 or 3 Bond themes of all time. Brilliant song by Shirley Bassey, nice credit sequence, and a really cool John Barry score. Not his best score, but a good one. John Barry never wrote a bad score for a James Bond film. So that's number 9. Now moving on, number 8. Again, this was a close one. I used to really love this film. It was right up there. As time's gone on, I don't enjoy it as much. You know, the last couple of times I've watched it, I see more holes in certain aspects of it. But it is sort of a kind of classic Bond. It's a fondly remembered Bond. This Bond is still one of the highest viewed things on British television. It was on Christmas Day in 1980 and it received, I think, 26 million views. And it's Live and Let Die, Roger Moore's debut. Really, again, a cool, surreal pre-credit sequence. It's got like 3 different settings and there's voodoo involved, and guy gets murdered at a funeral and then the coffin goes out to pick him up and he disappears and stuff like that. Obviously it takes its cue from Q, no pun intended. Actual fact, Q doesn't appear in this film. Desmond Llewellyn, this is the first film that he hasn't appeared in since Doctor No, because he's not in that, although there is a character called Major Boothroyd, I think. I can't remember now. Anyway, I'm waffling. It's obviously takes its cue from blaxploitation cinema, so you've got films like Shaft and things like that, and they've Bond again has sort of jumped on that bandwagon a bit. So it makes for having interesting villains. The villains are really good. Yaphet Kotto as Kananga / Mr. Big, really good. Love the henchman, lovely Jeffrey Holder as Baron Samedi. Sure is going to be a beautiful day, yes sir, beautiful day, love it. And then you've got Teehee, played by Julius T. Harris, who's got a pincer. He's great. He's great when he takes him to the crocodile farm. That's one of the all-time stunts where he jumps over the crocodiles. Really good. Great theme song. Good credit soon to Paul McCartney. Really interesting. The score's a little dated by George Martin, but I like it. Jane Seymour, her acting's not great, but she's beautiful. One of my all-time favourite Bond girls, women. She's amazing. Solitaire. Roger, he does a top job of coming into Bond, but there's a few bits where he doesn't quite nail it. One scene I found really poor is the scene with Rosie Carver when she's scared and she's run off and she thinks she's going to get killed by the voodoo on the island. She actually gets shot, but I think Roger's not happening in that scene. And then there's a couple other bits where they haven't found the right way to write his Bond, but it's full of loads of great one-liners. Names is for Tombstone Baby. Take this honky outside and waste him and stuff like that. It's great. It's just I just don't quite love it as much as I used to. Speedboat Chase, that's great. I'm talking myself back into it now, but it is a top Bond film, very of its time, and that's at number 8. Number 7. Okay, so this film is interesting because when it came out, I think there was a school of thought that it's the greatest Bond film ever, and my theory was that a lot of people saying that was people who hadn't seen a James Bond film for a long time, because it was very, very popular. Then again, there's people going, oh, it's not that good, it's crap. The truth of the matter is, it's a very good Bond film, and it's Skyfall. It's just not totally quite in the top echelon for me. Huge success. Its inflation adjusted figure is $1.3 billion. So to put it into context, it's up there with your high grossing Marvel films and things like that. Why was that? Basically, it was the Olympics 2012. The Queen does the go with Daniel Craig. It's the 50th anniversary Bond. It comes out a few months later. The timing's perfect. They hired Sam Mendes, a prestige director, to do it, and he does a really good job. It's got a really cool pre-credit sequence. The Adele theme song is not as amazing as people think it is. That's because Adele's not as an amazing singer as people think she is. She's not Shirley Bassey, not by a long shot. But apart from stupid pronunciation of the words Skyfall, it is a good song and it's got a Bondian atmosphere. And they've had a few problems with the songs up until this point. in the recent films. A really good credit sequence that actually tells you the kind of story of the film. Good musical score by Thomas Newman, first time doing a Bond film. Daniel in top form, Judi Dench. Some people criticise Javier Bardem's villain. I think he gets it right. He plays it up the camp element. He plays it large. It's been a long time since I had a villain like that. Going even to the Pierce Brosnan era, although they had some kind of ridiculous elements to villains, they never kind of really went for it. And Javier Bardem goes in there 100%. I love the bit at the end where he's like, "Oh, this running around," and stuff like that. One bit I don't like is the bit with Aston Martin with Judi Dench, with M's character, because it's got the red control knob, and I'm like, well, hold on, ejector seat, that's Sean Connery's Bond. Don't. Fair enough, he won his Aston Martin in a poker game in Casino Royale in Daniel Craig's first film, but don't mix that stuff up. That's annoying. Sam Mendes does quite good little nod, when he gets on the tube and he involves the public, which is a very Roger Moore thing, and there's actually no reference to Live and Let Die. This is what unstuck him in Spectre. But on this, I think the balance is right. Quite like the scenes in London, they're good, where it's a bit wet, a bit dull. It's quite effective to see that in a Bond film. The treatment of the sacrificial lamb character, there was a lot of controversy at the time because she was obviously been trafficked for prostitution, and then Bond kind of just steams in, doesn't he? And then later she's really callously killed. It's quite horrible, that. So tonally, that's something that's jarred already with the way, with things like the Me Too movement and how things have progressed since the film came out. I like the three act structure on this. Some people are like, why does he go to his house? That's rubbish. Why is it called Skyfall? I don't know. I liked it. It goes back to his house. Albert Finney's great. The plot with the what's on the stick thing, it's like the knock list or whatever in the first Mission Impossible. It's just a MacGuffin. It gets discarded. And how Javier Bardem turns up in loads of helicopters, I don't know. There is plotting problems, but it feels like it's the 50th anniversary of James Bond, and it pulls out the stops to deliver that. And with the death of Judi Dench's character, that's pretty poignant, and it's it creates something special. So it's always been a solid 8 out of 10, and I really like it. Going to number 6. This is the only Pierce Brosnan one in the top 10. I think. Let's just contextualise, it's GoldenEye, because obviously it had to be, because the other 3 have been out of the top 10. When this film came out, when it was announced Brosnan was doing Bond, at that time there hadn't been a Bond film when it was announced for 5 years. By the time this came out, it had been 6 years. It actually got moved into a Christmas slot where they traditionally go now. Bond films always came out in the summer. But I can't describe the excitement for me at the time. I was just like, oh, awesome, Bond's coming back. The cast Pierce Brosnan, I think, will be really good. When the trailer for this first appeared, I was just like, wow, this is going to be awesome. It just looks absolutely ripping. It's got stunts, action girls, everything you expect from a Bond film. And in the main, it doesn't and didn't disappoint. It's got probably the second greatest pre-credit sequence, where he jumps off the dam. And people kind of forget he actually dives off a cliff on a motorbike and catches up with a plane. The computer graphics or back projection's a bit ropey on that now, but it's awesome. He just drives that motorbike off a cliff. The whole pre-credit sequence is really tense, and it establishes an initial plot point really good. Always loved the Tina Turner theme song. I think it's a really good. That's my favourite Bond theme since the classic era. We'll come to some of the other ones later, obviously. The credits sequence by Daniel Kleinman, it was the first one he did, and he just took the Maurice Binder style and adapted it with computer technology for the modern era. Is fantastic. So the whole opening of GoldenEye, and then actually has the gun barrel logo going into the car chase at the start. I mean, it's just, whoa, the opening of GoldenEye is big. It lays it down, and a lot of that is to do with Martin Campbell, the director. And Martin Campbell did the British TV series Edge of Darkness, and he done a few films in Hollywood leading up to this. He did a film called No Escape with Ray Liotta, which is actually pretty good, and it's got some decently handled action sequences. So when he was selected, it was like, yeah, This guy knows what he's doing. He I think he's the best Bond director. He's only done 2 films, but his shot selection, the way he shoots things, the way that the editing's paced, the way he puts it together, he gets the right balance. His directorial style doesn't intrude on the Bond universe, it just enhances it. And he's got great action scenes in this. The tank chase around St. Petersburg's brilliant. It's got a cool 3-act structure. It's got a good climax, brilliant fight with Sean Bean. Again, the CGI green screens, it doesn't look great now, but it was all right at the time. The climax does suffer from poor model work, but it's quite a low budget, this one. The budget for this wasn't anything like the films after. I think the reason for that was they weren't sure, really. They weren't sure how interested people were going to be in James Bond. But as it turned out, very interested. I'll just look on my thing. Inflation adjusted, $750 million. It grossed 350 back in its day, and with inflation now, that's $750 million. So very successful out the back with Pierce Brosnan. Really good female characters, Isabella Scorupco, really good Bond woman, and Famke Janssen, great villainess. Sean Bean's not great. There's a bit where he slips into Yorkshire, blow mortel, James, which is quite amusing. And there's problems with the plot about him being the son of Lentz Cossacks, and the history timeline, and some good scenes with Judi Dench's Moneypenny, really good. Brosnan's great. He looks great. He's born to play it. And he was the right Bond at the right time. They needed a safe pair of hands. Couldn't take any risks. You couldn't take a Daniel Craig risk. They'd taken sort of a risk with Dalton, and it hadn't worked with audiences. Audiences voted with their purchases for this film. The thing that lets it down, I think the thing that stops it being, I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10, probably a 9, is the musical score. They used a guy called Eric Serra, who does Luc Besson films, and the score's just woeful. It just doesn't work. And when they tested it, they actually brought someone in to kind of do a score of the James Bond theme for the bit in the tank. If David Arnold had done this, that would have taken up a notch. And that's one of the things. There's a lot of scenes that have Bondian atmosphere, but it's undermined by the musical score. You've got to get the music right with James Bond films. And really, the music with James Bond films has never been as great as it was in the John Barry heyday, but it's got better. But it was big. I went to see this 3 times at the Pictures. Absolutely stoked for Bond, and it didn't disappoint. And I've got a lot of affection for the film. Number 5,